We measure voluntary compliance because that is our strategic intent. And in 2019, voluntary compliance index was 62.85%, and again has increased to 66.29% when we measured it earlier this year. And then the Auditor General is here, so we are very pleased to say that in 2022 through to the 2019 through to the current year, SARS has very proudly not only achieved an unqualified report, but in the last 3 years a clean audit report, which again is a testament that in order to deliver these exceptional results, we do not have to do so in an environment of poor governance. And then very close to my heart is our people, because without the people we are nothing. And so we focused very, very diligently on creating a more conducive environment for our staff during this period. And we introduced the notion of employee engagement with a very deliberate and intentional program to drive that. And again, we are very pleased to say that when we measured it in 1920, it was at 61.6%, and we have just received the report of the latest survey we've done in the first calendar quarter of this year, and our employee engagement had gone up to 71%. Again, so why are these indicators important? They don't speak about money, but it speaks about building an institution that can give confidence about the sustainability of giving effect to the mandate and the confidence with which we can project the revenue that is incumbent on the work that we do. And so these are what we call lead indicators at the heart of the rebuilding of SARS that gives us confidence in the sustainability of South Africa's fiscal integrity. Because tax revenue remain the lowest cost of funding government's program. It's cheaper than borrowing money, it is less impactful than raising taxes, and ultimately it is about spreading the tax base equitably across all those who have a paying obligation. Let me now return to some of the detailed results. And you will see there that in terms of each of these tax items, have a quick glance across it, but in the tax product analysis, we see that we have had a 12.56% growth, 12.6% growth in personal income tax. In corporate, we have had a growth of just over 2%. In VAT, a growth of 2.3%. Import duties, 8.6%. Taxes on property, a growth of almost 16%. Dividends tax and STC, a growth of 9.5%. Specific excise of 11.5%. Net fuel of 6.27%, and other taxes growing at 4%, a grand total of just under 6.6% growth year on year in net revenue. The slides that follow just gives a little bit more detail about that. So personal income tax, we can see this year, contributed 733 billion rand against 650 billion rand the year before. Pleasing to say that our refunds in each of these categories have also increased. I want to pause for a moment and talk about two-part retirement withdrawals, because this has been topical. Here I can share that in record time we had to build an administrative capacity to provide directives, unprecedented volumes of directives, and to provide it in near real time so that all of the pension funds who applied for these directives could give effect to the will of those who withdrew. And so of the 2.8 million taxpayers who in the last financial year submitted an application for a directive, we were able to issue directives to just over 2.5 million, which is related to almost 2.7 million taxpayers, and allowing an amount of 47.7 billion rand to flow back into the economy at a good multiplier effect. We saw a little bit of an uptick of that in consumption, along with the governor's helpful hand to lower interest rates, and generally inflation trending down, and the net tax collected from this initiative being 11.87 billion rand. What is really pleasing here, if you look at the spread across the various tax margins, you'll see that about 645, or a quarter of those who applied for the directive, did not pay tax because of the threshold where they find themselves. So a lot of the concerns about taxing poor people has no basis, because those who are below that threshold receive their money in full. And then in the middle three segments, where we have those who earn a little bit more, that's where the bulk of the contribution of the almost 12 billion came. Also interesting to note is that generally it is the middle class families who have dipped their hand into the retirement cookie jar, and wealthy people, clearly to the small extent that they did, we think that that is how they manage the diversity of their portfolio. So that is really a story behind the two-pot retirement withdrawals. I think overall, the balance between retention and withdrawal, two-thirds and a third respectively, was a fine, or what I call a Goldilocks solution to a problem of attending to short-term financial needs, which is dire for many families, whilst retaining a portion of that for retirement, which is very important for keeping the pressure off the state for further social grants. On corporate income tax, there you see the growth of 323 billion against 316.9 billion previous year. I will come back and touch on some of the compliance trends we see there in a moment. And value-added tax, which is the next tax, 458 billion against a prior year of 447 billion. So that's VAT. I want to then move on to customs duties and fuel levy. There we see an increase to 7.6 billion from 70.5 billion last year. And fuel levy, we see there a decrease from 91.5 to 85.8, reflecting a lower consumption due to an improved electricity production, but also a shift from using diesel as an alternative fuel for electricity towards rooftop solar. So positive for the economy, not so good for tax collection. And so what we thought we would also share with you is just a view of tax revenue by province, along with the growth. And these are the constitutional provinces, the 9 provinces in South Africa, and there we see Gauteng growing the net revenue contribution by 5.48%, KwaZulu-Natal by 6%, the Western Cape by 9.7%, the Eastern Cape almost 7%, 6.9%, Mpumalanga 10.25%, Limpopo 17.24%, Northwest 10.14%, Free State 10.06%, Northern Cape 0.38%, bringing again the total of 6.6. We thought it's important just to see where the economic activity sits. And of course, you also have to look at the actual contributions rather than just the growth. And there you see that most of the economic activity is in Gauteng, and we have ranked that for you in order of the size of contribution. Another lens through which we look, and this is for the interest of our directors here, because they would like to see how well did they do. And here we are given a view for our own employees. So the large business and international grew by 5.8%, Gauteng North region by 9%, KwaZulu-Natal by 5%, Western Cape by just over 9%, Gauteng South by 3.3%, Eastern Cape by just over 9%, Limpopo by about 17.5%, Northwest by 9.39%, and Free State by 11.24%. And then we have high wealth individuals by 15.4%. Head office, that's because we also collect taxes. We make the occasional phone calls, and we grew 17.06%. We really worked hard. And then that must still be in our final reconciliation. The allocated is the amount at the bottom. And here again, you can see the largest contribution coming from our large business and international segment, followed by Gauteng North, as one would expect, down to the Northern Cape as one of our smaller regions. So that gives you a sense of how the regions performed. And let's, at this stage, applause and give recognition for the hard work under the leadership of the directors. I know they're all smiling because they know that they have achieved what we set out to do as a team. You hear us speak a lot about our compliance program. And so I want to spend a few minutes, if you will allow me, to talk about compliance revenue. Central to the work we do is our compliance program. This is the program of work we formulate at the beginning of the year and set out to execute or implement as we give effect to our mandate objectives. The result of this work produces additional revenue which otherwise would not have been in the fiscus because it has not been paid over voluntarily by taxpayers to SARS. We therefore refer to this as the compliance dividend, or the revenue from administrative efficiencies. This year, I am pleased to announce a total of just over 300 billion rand from our compliance program. It represents a year-on-year growth of around 17% and is made up of the following specific areas. And this is, I am often reminded, 32 million little things we do to produce 300 billion rand. I see the DDG of Treasury is there. I don't think I welcomed him earlier. I don't know when he snuck in. But welcome to our Treasury colleagues. 94 billion rand is included in this amount by resolving over 3.7 million instances of outstanding debt. This is debt that would not have been collected had we not made the call, send a SMS, send a friendly letter, change the color of the letter from black to red, and eventually send the sheriff and issue a court, a civil judgment. And that's before we have to resort to freezing bank accounts and assets and attaching assets. So this is the suite of work we do. 307 million instances producing 94 billion rand. Included in this is the debt project that we embarked on in the past year. 103 billion from tax verifications, where risks are flagged through our AI-driven risk profiling models, powered by big data. We then look at the alert, we do debt equalization, and these are the refunds that we then further investigate, our staff further investigate. And this suite of work amounted to 1.7 million verification cases, producing the 103 billion rand. 59 billion from syndicated crime. These are complex crimes where more than one taxpayer is involved, often cross-border. that they executed 320,000 compliance audits, 30 billion from, sorry, the 59 was from customs and compliance audits, and the 30 billion from syndicated crime, conducting 198 complex investigations. 14 billion from general compliance work, doing 200,000 follow-ups with individual taxpayers who have outstanding issues on their account that needs to be completed invariably. When a taxpayer account is untidy, it's because they owe us money. 26 million service-related interactions at our branches, either via a phone, via a self-service platform. We assist taxpayers and traders to comply. And so this, amounting to the 301 billion to the fiscus in this current year, a growth, of 15.8%, or 16.25% of our total net revenue. Slightly higher this year than in previous years because of our added focus on the debt recovery project. I would like to share some of the phenomena and themes that we encounter in non-compliance. Firstly, let me deal with customs. On the 1st of September, we introduced VAT on small parcel e-commerce imports because the high street retailers experienced an inequitable situation that they were paying the duties in full, whereas clearing agents who brought in small parcels for thousands of individuals did not have to pay VAT, and neither did they have to pay the exact duty because there was a de minimis of 20% on goods below 500. We focused firstly on the clothing, textile and footwear in September, and from the 1st of February expanded that across the other range, and these goods therefore collectively resulted in more than 6-fold increase in the revenue that we collect from this. Small for now, it's under 200 million rand, but as we step this up, and this year we'll have a full year, we believe we estimated ultimately a revenue prejudice of about 3 billion rand, and we hope to approximate that value as we enforce this new regime. It's an example of administrative action that has a direct revenue result. Special focus also on high-risk industries in excisable production, such as fuel, alcohol and tobacco, where blatant non-compliance is prevalent. We've had successful convictions across these high-risk industries with potential prejudice of around 5 billion rand. But let me tell you, we are merely scratching the surface. There is so much more work to do in the area of customs crime, under-declaration, trade mispricing, trade-based money laundering, to name a few. There are currently 105 cases on the NPA roll, 33 of which are on trial, while 72 of them pending an allocation of a trial date. To enforce the regulations, 27 importers and clearing agents were either suspended or cancelled through our licensing, registration and cancellation committee due to various non-compliance issues, and as I said, mostly linked to clothing, textile, footwear, tobacco and cigarettes and alcohol. But it's across the board. There was also a substantial increase in the efforts to remove illegal imports from circulation. The number of seizures has increased by 33%, and the value of seized goods has decreased by 12%, which compared to the end of March to almost 6 billion. And there's a fuller table available for those who have interest, like the media. In terms of syndicated tax and customs crime, here we are dealing with complex syndicated tax and customs crime, which require a greater degree of collaboration with local as well as international law enforcement agencies. And it requires effective enabling legislation for information exchange and for joint enforcement action. The tobacco and gold industry, illicit trade industry, is a typical example where we've seen success in the dismantling of a complex scheme through our investigative and prosecution work of these syndicate perpetrators. Just in this industry, 10 billion assessments have been raised and already 4.2 billion of cash recovered. Over the past 5 years, our syndicated tax and customs division, their efforts resulted in revenue recoveries totaling 66.7 billion, 24 of it being revenue collections, 1.3 billion in refund savings, and 40.5 billion in revenue leakage prevention. In the illicit trade in tobacco and gold, which is often used also for money laundering, in this year we have continued to collaborate with local and international enforcement authorities, and this has made significant inroads in both the gold and illicit industry, issuing assessments of a further 10 billion. Now, a contentious issue is still the use of daily monitoring of licensed tobacco manufacturers. We will continue to deploy this technology. Here we use smart technologies and closed-circuit TV installed at tobacco manufacturers, despite the significant resistance by some industry players. SARS continues to engage with industry to discuss the implementation process, and we are also appealing the current judgment against the use of CCTV implementation. This approach will extend to other areas of abuse and criminality. Turning to large and international business, the audit interventions within this segment typically relates to transfer pricing and base erosion and profit shifting schemes. They are varied, they are complex, and mainly involve exotic transactions and business arrangements that result in permanent loss of revenue to the fiscus, as well as an erosion of the tax base. For the 24-25 financial year, 19 such cases have been completed, consisting of 8 transfer pricing, 5 international tax, and 5 corporate income tax and 1 dividend tax audits and investigations. This work raised assessments of 2.2 billion and cash of 2.8 billion. 40 cases are currently in progress. The base erosion and profit shifting schemes, where the exotic finance arrangements are deployed, sadly, often sponsored by big banks and professional firms that either promote or engage in schemes that involve transfer pricing and international tax. The main highlights under the BEPS themes include exotic structures or restructuring of businesses and the sale of businesses involving aspects such as share buyback transactions, international taxing arrangements using offshore passive entities to avoid South African tax on offshore income, transfer pricing arrangements involving engineering, procurement, and construction contracts, incorrect classification of entities, offshore marketing hubs located in low tax jurisdictions, and the use of offshore passive treasury entities to fund operations are some examples that we believe are abused. Other significant themes of concern is the abuse of the employment tax incentive scheme, companies not ring-fencing the assessed losses in line with legislation, second-hand gold abuse of the VAT system, stock write-off and impairments, and capex, particularly in the mining industry. Forward-looking, to provide greater clarity and certainty, we must progress the advanced pricing agreement program that has been introduced into legislation in the recent TAA Laws Amendment Act of 2023 and published on December 2023. And this is to allow companies who engage in corporate actions to rather approach SARS ahead of time and get a tax certainty ahead of implementing it so that they know what the tax price would be of a particular transaction. Turning to high wealthy individuals, given the complexity of the high wealth individual segment, we strive to achieve voluntary compliance and employ a differentiated service model with robust case management and targeted enforcement measures to uphold fiscal equity. This segment has made significant strides in base broadening, strengthening tax compliance and enforcement within the segment. Notably, the identification of a critical legislative gap in terms of Section 42, brackets 2, brackets B of the Income Tax Act, this was just for the nerds in the room, has paved the way for regulatory enhancements that are expected to mitigate potential revenue losses amounting to billions of rands in the future. Additionally, a landmark court judgment on a scheme with tax implications exceeding 1.3 billion reinforced the application of substance over form principles in GAR-related transactions. It's always been a matter that has ducked us. Now we have court precedents, and therefore it helps us with providing advice, advanced voluntary compliance, but also presents a clear, credible threat for those who try to abuse it. Continued focus on trusts, family offices, and related entities to ensure greater compliance in areas such as estate duty, capital gains tax, donation tax, as well as cross-border transfers in this area. In our specialized audit, thematic interventions that was completed included 236 lifestyle audits, including luxury vehicles. Sadly, luxury vehicles and properties are used to mask financial flows and in straightforward, blatant money laundering, and our focus on that cannot be enough. In this area, we've raised assessments of 1.8 billion rand. 28 pay-as-you-earn, I mentioned ETI audits, with an assessment value of 230 million rand. 80 security industry audits where there's also extensive abuse, with assessments valuing 3.6 billion rand. 82 financial intelligence centers, these are tip-offs we get from the FIC, with assessments of totaling almost 2 billion rand, and 35 customs audits with an assessment value of 1.3 billion rand. Turning to litigation, SARS is always committed to resolving all tax matters within its remit and in a timely manner. However, where there is legal uncertainty, the taxpayer has the right, and SARS is often duty-bound, to approach the court to provide legal clarity. In this regard, our litigation division has achieved a success rate of 92%. And customs and excise litigation of 87%. In the appeals court, our success is 69%, with 25 cases in favor of SARS, 11 in favor of taxpayers, and the rest are dependent on litigation in other courts. While the tax board has achieved 77%, with SARS conceding cases and taxpayers withdrawing 47% of cases when taxpayers are no longer confident in their matter. Just yesterday, the Constitutional Court in 3 matters took major decisions to provide legal clarity and certainty. The Constitutional Court reaffirmed the critical role of the tax court in determining tax-related matters. It reaffirms the constitutionality of Section 105 of the Tax Administration Act by restating that all tax matters related starts at the tax court, especially if the court has not determined the matter nor heard any objection, if there is anyone. The Constitutional Court clarified that the instances where a taxpayer can directly approach the court is if there are any other grounds by way of an appeal to the tax court. This is to prevent piecemeal adjudication of the matter and prevents vexatious litigation which tends to abuse the court processes, either to gain time or advantage in one or other way. And so again, the judgment yesterday by the Crown Court provides another plank of certainty and clarity, but also to deter the blatant abuse of the court to settle their scores. In terms of our revenue program, a few other areas. in terms of our central supplier database, which is used and managed within the Treasury family to identify non-compliance by government suppliers. Here we see a lot of abuse, and compliance efforts are continuously underway to engage with identified taxpayers with the aim of improving compliance and collecting all revenue due, together with interest and penalties. When we often find that those who want to have access to services provided by government tend to do a tick box assessment of their compliance, but are substantively non-compliant, or in certain cases not even registered. And these are the areas that we have to focus on. In terms of VAT on imported services, government departments and the public finance management entities are engaged with the aim of evaluating and improving their compliance with the provisions of the VAT Act. And this is again regarding the payment of VAT due on the acquisition of services from non-VAT registered non-resident suppliers. And this is an area of work where we still find abuse and therefore revenue leakage. In electronic services, we continually build our capability to analyze third-party data and to identify non-compliance by non-resident suppliers on electronic services, which results in registration and payment of VAT that are due by these entities. And so I thought we would share with you some of these trends, some of these observations. The next is to talk about the SARS revenue management system. We've built this to remind ourselves that when the minister announces a printed estimate, it is based generally on the assumptions of what the economy would do in a particular period and the tax policy instruments and tax rates that would be exacted on the economic activities. But that's a theoretical number. It's based on assumptions. It's modeled between the three institutions of National Treasury, SARS, and the Reserve Bank. But the actual revenue requires two other parts to be part of a system. And so what you see there as taxpayer behavior and confidence gives you a sense of compliance. And this is determined by the confidence taxpayers has in SARS and in government, the quality of the spend, wastage and corruption detracts from that, a sense of benefit, value for money, and ultimately taxpayer behavior. If that goes down, what will end up in the middle block will go down, regardless of what you have in the top corner of the triangle. To the left of that is the institutional capability. I spoke to you earlier about how we're building deep institutional integrity, how we select our work, which we frame as a compliance program, and the capability to give effect to that then determines the ultimate efficacy of SARS. And those three elements of the system combined then results in the revenue that we have announced today. And I think it is also why we make the continued plea for the continued investment in SARS. Let me share with you some strategic highlights between 2019 and 2024. We do not declare victory. We have a long way to go. Funding challenges remain, but we'd like to share with you some positive results. Firstly, in the area of digital transformation, we are pleased that we are recognized by private sector institutions and by our peers as a leader in digital transformation in the public sector. And that award our teams won for the work we have done in auto-assessment, the deployment of digital transformation plus artificial intelligence. The next recognition is being ranked as a #1 employer. That's not an insignificant feat for a public sector organization to be recognized as the top employer by accountancy students in business, commerce, fields, and number one employer, the most attractive in business and commerce studies. So again, proud to say that we hold our own out there as an attractive employer. Recently, Microsoft visited South Africa and amongst others recognized SARS as one of the leading institutions globally for the deployment of artificial intelligence. And according to the president of Microsoft, one of only 2 digital government institutions around the world that is as advanced as we are. And so it was with great delight that they invited us into a hackathon along with 3 other private sector, well-endowed financially participants. We went in with our meager team, meager financially but great in stature, and took part in the hackathon. It was a 2-week grueling session, and we were absolutely delighted when in the field of 4 players, 3 of which were private sector, SARS won the hackathon. And it is building a proof of concept for how we can deploy AI into the contact center of the future. Just to summarize, therefore, our positive trends, the blue representing our core business, which is a compound annual growth rate in net revenue of 7.6%, in compliance revenue of 18.7%, voluntary compliance up by 3.4 percentage points, and that's hard work to even gain a percentage point, and trade facilitation up by 51%. The grey is very important because that speaks to the lead indicators of institutional integrity, and there, those numbers I've mentioned before, just to summarize them again. Taxpayer service up to 87%, attitude to compliance at 77%, public trust at 75%, and employee engagement at 71%. So all in all, while we do not declare victory, we are pleased that the program and project of rebuilding SARS is bearing fruit, and again a testament to the hard work of 13,000 people at SARS. And I want to turn to the future of tax administration as we draw to a close. The first phase of modernization, I often remind our teams, was about digitalizing physical experiences. So taking paper and making it virtual, online forms. Taking the act of posting a return to sending it to us via email, on a digital platform. Physically assessing a declaration to now assessing a declaration using AI. And so the first phase was about transferring a physical experience into a digital experience. The next phase of modernization, which we call modernization 3.0, is significantly beyond the digitalization of experiences. It is about the disintermediation of an experience. In other words, going from physical filing to online filing, the vision is to disintermediate the need to file, as auto-assessment have proven. And so 5 million taxpayers this year did not have to file because we did not provide them with an online experience. We removed the experience at all. Those who did file could do so remotely anywhere in the world. If the moon had internet, we would place them on the moon as well. And they could submit their return to us completely online and would have received their assessment in under 5 seconds. When I share that with my colleagues abroad, they literally look in awe because there's such a far distance for many of them to travel. And so this is therefore the next ambition, to build a smart digital tax administration platform that is embedded in data science, in artificial intelligence, and other enabling technologies. And it's growing exponentially. It's hard to keep up with. And the aim is to build a platform that fosters trust, promotes efficiency, and ensures transparency. In the age of AI, ethical AI matters. And we have to revolutionize the way we engage with taxpayers. Because for us, the best service is no service. To do the work before you even think you need to do the work. Yes. That's our ambition. It's tall, but as our AI have demonstrated, we know that it is possible. We also want to talk about modernization not only in the context of SARS, but in the context of the whole of government. Because a smart, modern SARS cannot exist in a government that is not smart and modern. And so we have begun to work with our colleagues in government. We have two of the leaders of institutions we work with here, the governor, the DG of Home Affairs, because we recognize that we have to fix the entire system, because the chain is only as strong as the weakest link. And so a whole of government approach to modernization is no longer a nice to have. FATF, for example, requires us to demonstrate our ability to successfully prosecute complex tax evasion, illicit financial flows, money laundering and terror financing. Tax and customs cross-border crimes are on the rise around the globe and is a huge area of concern for governments, but also for revenue authorities, for central banks, and for financial intelligence centers. And so this level of collaboration is important. We have an opportunity to leverage the progress we've made at SARS in digital transformation, as well as the deployment of artificial intelligence to strengthen our capability across various law enforcement agencies, such as SAPS, the Hawks, the SIU, and the NPA. SARS is already working with the Reserve Bank and DHA Home Affairs on an instant electronic payment system, a unique digital identity, and other enabling technologies. This is and in addition to that, to strengthen our management at our ports of entry by working with the Border Management Authority. The following is the list of generational projects which SARS will embark on if properly funded, Deputy Minister, as part of, in collaboration with other government agencies as part of the next phase of modernization. Firstly, we need to prepare our staff because we cannot let any of them be left behind. I think it is irresponsible of leaders to retrench people because we haven't invested in them. And so the investment in SARS has a long lead time, and we've given our employees the assurance that we will take them along as we embark on this modernization journey, demonstrate proper steward leadership and workforce readiness, so that our staff know that in the future their co-worker will be an AI agent, not necessarily another human being. Establishing a unique digital identity system will reduce the level of fraud by improving the integrity and the recognizability of any individual or entity anywhere in the system of government, so that you can't have a job and get a social grant, for example, or you can't procure from the state but be delinquent. And so this is an important project. Then creating a comprehensive taxpayer account to enable both the taxpayer but also empower our staff to serve taxpayers. Modernizing our case management system, which is now 2 decades old. Embedding an entity-based compliance model which allow us to go from a reactive response to an instance of non-compliance to a proactive way of tracking and monitoring the compliance status of an entity or an individual on an ongoing and real-time basis. Building an instant payment system in partnership with the Reserve Bank. It's nice to have the Reserve Bank as a partner, Deputy Minister, because they pay. They a lot more. They print money when they need it. We have to collect money. Modernizing our VAT administration system is very key because it's a huge area of abuse. And then modernizing customs and excise across the board, both physical infrastructure as well as the digital infrastructure. Revenue outlook for 2025. So yes, last night, midnight, the year end. This morning when we woke up, the scoreboard was 0. Last night at midnight, we had 1.855 trillion in the bank. This morning, the bank is empty. We have to start all over again. And so as I think about that, I'm reminded of the famous words of our beloved Tata Madiba when he said, "I've discovered the secret that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. I've taken a moment here to rest, as we do so now, to steal a view of the glorious vista that surrounds me, to look back on the distance I've come. But I can rest only for a moment, for with freedom comes responsibilities. I dare not linger, for my long walk is not ended." And that's how we feel on the 1st of April every year, after we've announced a wonderful revenue results, we have to get right back to the grindstone to start out earning the money that government requires. And so similarly at SARS, we dare not rest. A new challenge awaits. If we are to achieve the 2025-2026 initial estimate of 2.06 trillion set by the Minister of Finance, we cannot waste a single day. We have to break down that. I recently shared with our colleagues that on average, SARS has to collect 9 billion rand every working day. And that means over R1 billion every working hour in order to deliver the revenue that government needs. In this coming year, SARS will intensify efforts on an enhanced revenue recovery program using the additional 2 billion allocation. Central to this is the focus on outstanding debt already owing to the fiscus, as well as the millions of outstanding returns. We hope to recover an additional 20 to 50 billion and thus strengthen the fiscal situation in the medium term. In addition, we will continue the modernization of SARS to improve the overall efficiency and effectiveness of the tax and customs administration and strengthen our efforts to address the significant areas of non-compliance. The initial allocation for this year is 500 million rand, and we will engage the Minister over the next few weeks to increase this amount over the medium term. Unless we set up the investment in SARS, we remain compromised in our ability to effectively administer our legal mandate and thus sub-optimize the fiscal integrity of South Africa over the medium and long term. We'll focus on the following compliance themes. On balance sheet reduction, as you have heard, a focused effort on debt cash collections and outstanding returns. In addressing the tax gap themes, on tax-based broadening, both formal and informal economy, on international taxes with a strong focus on base erosion and profit shifting, as well as the digitalization of economies, on trade-based money laundering and illicit financial flows, specifically tobacco, fuel and gold industry, trade mispricing and undervaluation fraud, on e-commerce to focus on small parcels but also beyond, on high-wealth individuals who have often the means to mask the true nature of their wealth. Cryptocurrency is no longer an emerging asset, it's a well-thriving asset, and South Africa, SARS, is proud to co-chair the crypto assets reporting framework that is led by the OECD. And in syndicated tax and customs crime, specifically addressing VAT fraud and other tax crimes. How much progress we will make will depend on the long-term addressing and fixing the long-term funding of SARS. As I therefore close, and thank you for your presence here, but also more generally to those South Africans who are listening to us. Without taxpayers, travelers and traders, we have no tax revenues. I would like therefore to express unqualified appreciation to over 62 million citizens who through their consumption contribute to VAT. We often are told we only have 7 million taxpayers in South Africa, and I have to tell them, everyone who lives in South Africa contributes towards tax. To the 28 million, it's now 33 million registered individuals and trusts. To the 4 million companies, the 1 million VAT vendors, 650,000 employers, 338,000 traders, including authorized economic operators, and to the 13,100 hardworking men and women at SARS, thank you. Thank you, South Africa, for your contribution. And we know that with your support, we will continue to produce the work that we are mandated to do. I've recently penned a letter to all South Africans, which will appear online, but also in the weekend newspapers, as a measure of expressing our support, but also our appreciation for their support, but also our commitment to continue to serve them. That, I believe, is at the core of the work we do. The social contract we have with society determines the ultimate impact of our work and thus the contribution of revenue to fund the program of government. So with that, thank you for being here. Thank you, South Africa.
Sibulela to your mom and dad for bringing the son of the soil on this earth, a visionary, a leader, a father, an advisor, a mentor, a coach. We are saying, Tata Madiba, it always seems impossible until it is done. You talk 2006 trillion, we talk 3006 trillion. Are we not saying that, SARS? Huntu, walala, wasala, we are in it. The higher purpose is in these hands. Halala.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Commissioner Kisveta, Deputy Minister Sarupen, our Governor of Reserve Bank, Mr. Legenwald, the Executive Secretary of ATF, Young Mputa, our Ombudsman, Director General Makode, and all protocol observed. Thank you very much, Commissioner, for the outstanding address that we have just given. And of course, all the credit and all the thank you goes to the hard-working women and men of SARS. Thank you very much. Colleagues, we are at almost the tail end of our event. It's those of our colleagues who are journalists. This is the opportunity to ask questions. In doing so, please do identify yourself, your text number, as well as your the media house you're coming from. And Commissioner Kisveta is here to respond to any clarification-seeking questions. Yes, please, roving mic.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Koka from the Sunday World newspaper. Unfortunately, I don't know my text number by heart. I just have 3 questions for the SARS Commissioner. The first one, so I've seen that there have been media reports that the South African Revenue Service has been finding it hard to get people who are high income earners to actually pay tax. So I just wanted to get a response from the Commissioner. What kind of attitude has the South African Revenue Services been getting from high income earners who evade paying tax? And then secondly, the Commissioner mentioned illicit financial flows. So how is that battle going? How is SARS trying to fight and combat illicit financial flows? And lastly, there's been a conversation in the political space and civil society space about the introduction of a wealth tax. What is SARS' attitude towards that? Does SARS support the wealth tax? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your name and number?
Tshepo SABC News. On the refunds, 437. Are you comfortable with your percentage of, with your refund as a percentage of your total collection where it is at the moment? Thank you.
Any other question? The 2 commissioners can take them. Okay.
It's got Tennyson 24. I've got to show you just this slide over here. where you've got the projection for next year, 2 trillion. Is the figure PIT at 28.6, unless I'm missing something? I'm just wondering if that's correctly marked.
We'll check that.
PIT, because you've got PAYE at 785.5, wouldn't that be this?
So we have pay as you earn, which is payroll administered, and PIT, which is by other provisional income earners.
I'm with you, but in your...
Can we
Okay.
check that
Yeah.
outside?
Okay,
Sure,
sure,
that's
no
a
problem.
fact check. Okay. So I'm going to far out some of these questions to some of the directors that are here, so that they can earn their lunch. I will speak to IFFs, but also ask the governor to give a perspective, because the Reserve Bank is an important monitor and regulator of cross-border flows. So he is here. I will give an answer on the wealth tax, but ask the director of the high wealth tax to just talk about the experience on high wealth earners. I will ask the Deputy Commissioner to talk to refunds, whether we think it's right, and maybe supplement that. So let me start by talking to generally just wealth tax, because we've been clear about our sharing the position in the public domain. So we don't support or not support any taxes. SARS is required to advise the minister, who is then principally accountable for deciding on tax policy. SARS does not take a position on whether tax policy is good or bad, but we do advise. So what is our advice on wealth tax at the moment? Our advice is the following. Firstly, that in many ways we already have a wealth tax. In order to introduce a wealth tax, we have to do a few things first. Firstly, ask who are the wealthy? How do you define them? Once you've defined them, the second question is where are they? Can you locate them? The third is, what would a wealth tax be and what would it replace? And the fourth is, how would you administer it? Because any tax policy is only as good as our capacity to administer it. So that's the backdrop when we think about a wealth tax. We know that in the budget ahead, the total income, the total employed South Africans is, let me round the numbers off to make it easy, is about 16 million. About 8 million of them earn below the income earning threshold, below the tax paying threshold. So they earn their money, they don't pay taxes. 8 million of them earn enough money to pay tax, from the lowest to the marginal tax. The 8 million, about 560 or 570,000 of them earn above R1 million. That segment contributes about 48% of all taxes collected from individuals. So if you think about it, about 3.5% of all formally employed individuals in South Africa, about 3.5 to 4%, actually pay almost half of the tax. And so that's the first lens through which we must look if we ask about a wealth tax. The second is that we have a number of other taxes that are biased towards wealthy people because they have assets. So what are these taxes? Firstly, we have estate duty taxes that have certain exemptions for low asset owners, and for those who have more assets, it starts attracting a tax on demise of a taxpayer. The second is we have property taxes, and again, biased towards wealthy people. There's a threshold below which you don't pay transfer duties, and there's a threshold that excludes primary residents from paying capital gains tax on disposal. So that's another way of taxing wealthy people disproportionately to poor people. You have, if you trade in shares, you pay security tax. And so these are taxes, so estate duties, capital gains tax, donations tax is another tax, share trading, estate duty. These are taxes that are collectively biased towards wealthy people. So if we then think about whether or not we should introduce a wealth tax, and again, that decision is above my pay grade, but the advice we would give is we already have a significant tax burden on wealthy people in South Africa. And secondly, from the experience of other countries, it hasn't really worked successfully anywhere in the world. The one country where they've had marginal success is in Switzerland, and there they swapped out income tax for wealth tax, and so to ensure that you have an equitable tax system. So that would be the advice we would give into the conversation of whether or not we should introduce a wealth tax or not. Is there a roving Mac? I'm going to ask Natasha to speak to the experience of high earners.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for that question. So with regards to the perception that the wealthy are or are not paying sufficient tax, I think by and large we are fortunate that for the most part we experience compliant high-roll taxpayers, but that doesn't mean that taxpayers don't have the right to plan their affairs in a way that's most feasible to themselves. And it is for those reasons that the high-roll tax unit was formed in addition to providing a differentiated service model. So in terms of that perception, within the high-roll unit which was formed, we have expanded our tax base and tripled its since inception to ensure that high-roll taxpayers are paying or are perceived to be paying their fair share. In addition to the two matters that the Commissioner has mentioned with regard to the identification and closure of the critical legislative loophole and the landmark for judgment that we had, we are satisfied that we are doing enough from a compliance and enforcement perspective. We've also added to our radar not just high-roll taxpayer individuals, but trust associated entities and companies as well. We are comfortable that taxpayers that are on SARS' radar is being adequately serviced and that there is adequate compliance measures in place.
Thank you. Let me invite the Governor to talk to illicit financial flows, and then I will supplement.
Thank you very much. By definition, if they are illicit, they are unknown. So, so you do not have the idea. We monitor cross-border flows in terms of the exchange control regulations. And when the flows are illicit, they take two different types. Firstly is that they will attempt to bypass the regulations to take money out of the country. There haven't been much of the illicit flows that come in. They tend to be going out. And secondly, they will then try to bypass the customs system either through under invoicing or transfer pricing, which then becomes a SARS issue. What we have between the two institutions is a system of matching. So people have either purchased or are selling goods across the border. And then they say to SARS, they had sold these goods overseas for $100. That is what is declared. But we run the cross-border payment system, and then we can tell that actually they received 150 and not $100. And at that matching point, we say to SARS, there is a transaction you might be interested in, and we leave it there. SARS will take a special interest. There also happens that people are taking money out for which they need approval in terms of the exchange control regulations. And there are a couple of ways of doing it. They can do it through that invoicing and under invoicing, or they simply transfer the money out. If they just transfer the money out, the bank that they bank with is supposed to keep this thing. And this used to be a problem, because there used to be a jurisdiction where you could take money to, and you do not have to have a name, you just have a code, and nobody will know that it is your money. But now there is a mandatory exchange of information. So if you have taken money to another country and you are a South African, that jurisdiction is under an obligation to say to the South African, we have got Joe South Africa who has got an account here. This is how much money is here. We think you might be interested in how this money got here and how much the money is any. So the interrelationship between the revenue authority and the central bank then becomes important because these things then interact. And sometimes it just so happens that the money is there, and then we say, well, how did you get this money? And then we said, well, this is my money, and then we find that we can't do anything. And then he has got the power to say that it doesn't matter, we know it's your money. But here is your tax bill, pay the tax bill, thank you very much.
Thank you. So that's quite important, the relationship between the two institutions, to observe that. The governor spoke about stuff that you buy, that you then apply for an advance payment, which is inflated, and the declaration of the customs good is then, and that's the arbitrage that people look for. But we also have a few other mechanisms in place. We know we have R1 million discretion that citizens can use for offshore transactions without any further approval. Then we have, within South African Revenue Service, we have an application for advanced foreign transfers. We would then do a compliance check, and where we have concerns, we address those concerns first, because we have a capital flight risk that we have to manage. But let me just say, trade-based money laundering, which some of the examples the governor spoke to, trade-based money laundering is a growing concern. It, in fact, at the World Customs Organization is an item that is fairly and squarely on our agenda, because trade is a huge medium for laundering money. Let me invite the Deputy Commissioner Makubu to speak to refunds. The pleasing thing that we have is that our refunds of the three revenue lines of gross refund and net refunds actually the fastest growing. But there's a balanced view which you can share.
Thank you, Commissioner. So indeed, the 8.2% growth year-on-year on refunds is the fastest growing item. We know that there are one-off events in there. For instance, in the diesel refunds, we just settled a large refund in the electricity sector, so we know where it's coming from, and we do monitor anomalies that take place. The Commissioner spoke about adopting machine learning and artificial intelligence to the tune of around 70 billion, where we have actually stopped refunds that were claimed in the system that didn't actually flow because of that prevention. So it's a critical balance that we play of allowing legitimate refund. Our stance is, if a refund is legitimate, the sooner we can be able to pay it, the better we are able to drive growth in the economy. The refunds we paid are around 6% of GDP, so it's important money that needs to go out as long as it is legitimate refund. So we're not concerned that 8.2% is on the high side, because we understand where the refunds stem from and which industries and sectors are driving that. Maybe lastly, refunds are a function of economic activity. So we do model what an economy such as ours should be able to generate in refunds, especially if you look at value added in the economy. So we do have a number of means and models that we test whether we are excessive or not. Thank you very much.
And as you can see by segment where the refund goes to, on the second graph there.
Thank you. Last round, colleagues, journalists. It looks like Commissioner Setting is clear.
Thank you. Once again, thank you very much. So just about this room, we have refreshed this room. This is actually our operations command center. Some of you had a walkthrough this morning. These screens don't normally look like that. Each of these screens are actually connecting our country, all of our service points, whether it is a generator, a server, a computer, a vehicle. We can track all of that around the country. We can see whether all of our sites are online, whether there is, in the good old days of load shedding, whether there's backup power that is there. But we also do an in-depth management of all of our casework, because we don't collect revenue per se. We resolve cases, and every case has a revenue outcome. Either more money or flows in or money flows out. So actually what we do is work all of these instances of service queries and cases that we generate, and the outcome of that is a revenue outcome, a compliance outcome, or a facilitation outcome. And that, therefore, is how we produce revenue. So thank you for your interest in SARS. Thank you for your support. All of our colleagues and friends and partners. And again, thank you for the media for reporting our work. And lastly, but most importantly, thank you to our colleagues in the room and the 13,900 people who are online and hopefully enjoyed this positive results announcement. Nkosi kakhulu. If you have us now.
No, it's, everything is done, Commissioner.
Oh, you forgot about the microphone.
The microphone.